welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this beautiful morning. I don't know where you guys are, but here in Texas, we do not know what to do with ourselves because it is actually, you can go outside and not immediately hate your life and wonder. So it's amazing here, and it's going to be a special day, a great day. I hope you all had a chance to watch the video from this week. Pastor Brett Jones. It was fantastic. I'm honored. Many of you know that I am lead Destiny Leadership Institute and work for Dr. Brassfield, and honored to fulfill that role. But in addition to what I do for Destiny, I'm also on staff as a pastor here at Grace Church in Houston, and I have two wonderful pastors. So I feel like I have three mentors and men in my life that most guys would be lucky to have one of them, and I have three between Pastor Brett and Pastor Scott, his brother, as well as Dr. Brassfield. So today, Pastor Brett has joined us. I see some other friendly faces on. Special shout out to Pastor Rex Johnson. Pastor Rex, thanks for being here, as well as the rest of you guys. Glad to see everyone here. Well, Pastor Brett, why don't we just jump in? And I've never known you to not have much to say, so my job is quite easy today. Just to, you're like that little toy. I just wind you up, and then you'll go for as long as we have. I know this is a topic you're so you're well known for, and I will say that you're definitely one of my favorite conversation partners because you are so well read, and you know so much about so much, and I've learned a lot from you over the past several years as well. So let's talk about getting back into the topic: lifelong learning, lifelong reading, and I think maybe where we can start is that for many of us, reading may not be a hobby or something that we just naturally enjoy. Mm-hmm. But as we've been reading the book by Oswald Chambers, and the book that we're reading, we the first thing he says is that the power of discipline, and reading is a discipline. So why don't we start there? Have you always enjoyed reading? To what extent do we read for pleasure, and to what extent is it just a discipline that we do whether we want to or not? Let's talk about the relationship between reading and discipline.
Well, thank you very much for letting me be here today. Pardon my voice. It'll clear up after a while. We got bad allergies going on here right now. I've enjoyed reading since I was a child. I enjoy reading biographies, basically, mostly, instead of fiction, but I do read some of that. Here's what I know is that being effective in the ministry is going to require study. It's going to require reading. Too many people have taken the point of scripture that says, if you get up and the Lord will fill your mouth. He's going to fill your mouth to be in the right season at the right time, but he's going to fill it with what you've already put in your head. Right. He's going to fill it with what you've already learned. So to take the time I'm going to take first the position of the guy or the person that doesn't like to read. You can conquer that, just like a guy that doesn't want to exercise conquers that, or you don't like cooking, but after a while you're tired of eating out. So you can conquer this by first, there's something you're interested in, whatever that subject is. Use that to begin the habit of reading, begin the discipline of reading. If you look at reading like you're looking at a diet, that's something you hate to do, then it's not going to work well for you. But if you look at it knowing that it's a means to an end, you have to do these things if you want to do those things. And if you say, I so hate doing these things, I just can't do them, then that prevents you from doing those things. So where you want to go has to be a strong enough draw to pull you through what you don't like doing. Mm-hmm. So if you say, for me, if I say I need to lose, you don't need to lose 1 ounce. If I say I'm going to lose 20 pounds, I have to want that badly enough day after day to tell myself that wouldn't be a good choice if you want to reach that goal. And then if I am not really serious about the goal, I just kind of wish for the goal, then I start giving myself like 6 cheat days out of every week. And then when I do that, I've kind of bombed what I was trying to do. So if your there is strong enough, especially if it's a calling, if you're there is strong enough, it will draw you, and you will say, what do I need to do to get there? And they'll say, well, you need to be well read. You need to know, because one of the purposes, especially if I'm talking to mostly speakers here, I don't know the makeup of everyone online right now. So I'm gonna just make an assumption that most of you that are watching this, you're in ministry of some sort, you do some sort of ministry, you stand at some time, you teach, you lead, whatever. If you are going to be the person that is giving a direction, you need to know that direction very, very well. If you have just a rudimentary knowledge of what you're going to talk about, your effectiveness is going to be minimal. You have to be able to thoroughly explain where you're going. Peter wrote, be ready that we would always be able to give a good confession, that we would always be able to give a good argument, that nothing would preclude us from being able to express ourselves. I come from a family where everyone, there's nobody in my family that's shy. Nobody blows each other over, but no one's shy. So when we get together, we talk easily. My wife doesn't come from that kind of family. She comes from a family that their makeup of how they speak and what they do is altogether different. So there's times that she is quieter, and some say, well, she's shy. She's not shy. She's got plenty to say, but she's of the sort, if someone else in the room is saying it, I don't have to say it. I mean, if it's already been said, I just want to make sure it was said. And there's been times I've told her, but that doesn't help someone that's trying to be in conversation with you. You're getting all you need from this, but you've got something to give to this. So whenever you speak into this, then it opens new things. It's the Robert Frost poem. He said, knowing that I will not come back this way because way leads on to way. He said, once I get here, when I get to that point, I won't be able to see it from here, but when I get there, there'll be another way. And I get there, there'll be another way. Reading does that for you. Reading allows you to go places that you can't go, that maybe you physically haven't gone. You can read some things that would pique your attention. So you start with something that you like, and it doesn't matter to me if it's a magazine. Man, when I was a kid, I read the back of the cereal box. I mean, I read because it's just something I wanted to do. We weren't allowed to have a TV when I grew up, so reading was the best option. And I found it's kind of like whenever you read a book and a novel, and then you go see the movie. Rarely do people come out and go, now that movie was better than the novel. They usually come out and say, oh man, because you have the hero and the villain drawn in your mind, and your imagination is more vivid to you than anything you're going to see and bring in, because you're able to conjure it and feel it and know it. And you had to, in your mind, draw what that room looked like. You had to, in your mind, figure out what the depth of that was going to be. In your mind, you had to say, this was all arrayed in front of them. This was the battle. You had to do all that. When you're watching a movie, you can sit there with a piece of popcorn in your mouth, and they try to do it all for you. And it's so much better when you are in it. Well, then imagine if you are the speaker and you need to say something to entice someone to come in. You need more than, a rudimentary vocabulary to do that. You've got to be of the sort that you can speak to the people in the room that would be highly educated, and they'll be engaged. And then you have to, in that same time, speak it in a way that that 8-year-old boy on the second row will be able to know what you talked about. And to do that without being silly, some people go silly to try to look smart, to try to look silly. You don't have to do that. If you have the if you've been well read, you'll be able to cover both of those things. And after you've done it for a while, it will be normal. It will be natural to you. You said that Pastor Rex is on the call here. I just have one person. I don't have it on tiles. He is the master. He is the master of getting everybody in the room with him. Wherever he's going, everybody in the room will go. He's like Moses and the children of Israel. We will not leave one hoof behind. He is going to take everybody with him. He's been doing that. I first heard him preach when he was probably in his early 20s, mid-20s maybe. He's been doing that all his life. He did it as a teenager. So when you do that for a while, it's like asking someone, how do you ride a bike? I'm sure I struggled with that in the beginning, but I mean, when you first started to ride, you held it, oh God, all your deal was looking at the wheel, don't want to die, don't want to die, don't want to die. And in 3 months, you're riding without hands, undoing a bubble gum, riding to your friend's house. When you first started riding the bike, the bicycle was the subject matter. Later, the subject is I'm going to my friend's house and I happen to be using a bicycle to get there. That's being able to read and put yourself to a better level every time, so that it's not a struggle. Now that doesn't mean that you don't get. I think you should always. This is the Word of God. You should always have a tightness in you when you get ready to speak. I hope you don't ever handle it slouchy or I mean, after all these years, I kind of get that adrenaline. Like, okay, I've got to bring it the very best I can. But if you studied hard, you train hard. I'm not an athlete, but I've heard if the athlete doesn't train hard, he won't play hard. And so that's a really long answer as to why we have to do that.
Great. So good. Pastor Rex, you were mentioned. So just like in the debate format that we all suffered through last night, if your name's mentioned, you get a chance to respond. Do you have anything like what would you say has been a trick? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but since Pastor Brett brought you up, I'd love to get your perspective. What would you say would be something that you've done, whether it's continuing education, reading, that gives you that special skill of bringing everyone with you in a sermon? I'm going to get you to unmute here, if you don't mind. I think you're still muted, Pastor.
There we go. How's that?
There we go. Yes,
All
sir.
Right. I didn't know today was storytelling day. Brett just told a story. I don't want to call him what Mr. Biden called Mr. Trump last night.
Oh, God.
Kind of told a story. What I've tried to do, Brother Landon, and I'm going to make this very short, what I've tried to do is when I get a subject in my mind, when I get a thought process in my mind, I try to study it out to a point where I can cover the bases. I can cover every base. It's how I do my preaching study. And I read, when I say commentaries, I read particular things that I have discovered in life that have helped me find the background stories to a lot of things. And when you have the background stories, it's not just like preaching Samson and Delilah or David and the slingshot. You get background stories, you understand how you bring people into the foray of the thought. And so that's when I first started preaching, we didn't have computers. You couldn't look up situations. And so I had a Cruden's Concordance. Honest to God, I had a Cruden's Concordance and a Thompson Chain Reference Bible. And Thompson Chain had some great things in the back of the book that helped me in my study. I was an avid Bible reader, and I was an avid, anxious young man. One of the first revivals I ever went to in my life while I was still single lasted 5 months. I went there with 10 sermons, and that'll stretch you. That'll stretch you. And so you have to start preparing and reading and getting more knowledge of what you're going to say, and then hope that you have maybe a little different angle on it. I don't know what that really means. It's just another slant, another way to look at the scriptures. And that's what I've done. I'm not the avid reader that Brett is, but I am a very avid reader. I am a reader. And when I go on trips, I'll read a couple of books. And I try to read books that'll help me do what I'm still doing. Very rarely do I read a fiction book. Very rarely. I'd rather go see the movie. Now, I agree with Brett that sometimes when you read a book, the movie just kind of a dud, you know. But the bottom line is I try to read something that'll stock my mind with spiritual concepts. And when I get in the pulpit, they seem to stick. They seem to be there, and you can kind of retrieve them. And that's what I do. And so I don't know if that helped anybody, but I have a book. And I'm going to give you a little hint here. It's got some of the greatest stuff in it you'll ever read. It's called Unger's Biblical Dictionary. I've had it for years. It's a tremendous book, and you may have 14 of them that hadn't opened it up. I've got stuff in my library that I've never opened up, that if I probably opened up, I'd learn a whole lot more. Mm-hmm. But I discovered some slants. I discovered some how to get to different thoughts and concepts. And I discovered who was kin to who, and who was this and who was that, and who was a part of this and who was a part of that in the Bible. And it helps you. It helps you that sometimes you read through things and you say, I didn't get that, but then you can read some background material on it, and it always helps. And then I've got places to go. I've got a river that I can find just about any illustration that I want to find on what I want to preach on. I don't use people's ideas and concepts. I use stories from them. I use their illustrations. And so you have to have these rivers. And so I read those and I prepare those. And that's a couple of things that I do. And then every now and then I call Brett and or I call Scott. Or call Ron Lyles, or I call people.
Here's my Crudens that you talked about. Look at it, it's held together with electrical tape.
There you go.
This is the one I got in 1977 or 8.
Yeah.
And this right here, if any of you guys are younger that never have done this, every word in the Bible is referenced in here.
That's right.
And you can go find that word, and it'll tell you where to go find it. Now, right. I know you can do that right now. Click, and I'm very thankful for that. But I'm going to tell you, there's something about opening this and looking at this that draws you to the place of opening something else.
There it is.
So if you're getting everything off of online, everybody else is looking online too. Your goal is, how can I bring this across in the most efficient and effective way?
Right.
And so you find that, you find your right words, you find the right resources. So, Pastor Landon, that's kind of the way I've done it. And you just heard from one of the masters right there how he does it. Yeah, everybody listening, this is a Rubik's Cube. You keep turning this. What you do one time, you say, "Oh, good, I'm gonna do that next time." It's not gonna work that way next time, because the journey keeps going.
Right.
The path has got some curves. There's some things that when you teach, you need to slow down to 30. You don't need to teach them at 60. You throw somebody off. Right. You slow down a little bit, because we got to grasp it. Then there's some things you can hit the gas and go. You can go on it, and you learn that instead of having somebody beside you all the time going, "Okay, you need to slow down now." It's like when you were 15 learning to drive. Slow down. Okay, speed up. You will get that. But reading gives you the background to feel comfortable to go do that. And right. Even though you can't I can't recall where I read that. I may not be able to tell you that, but it's there. I've got it in here, and I'm able to reference it. Sometimes I'll go, I need to go look that up, be sure I'm saying it the right way. I need you to get back to your subject, but that's Pastor Rex and I could sit here and talk back and forth to all of you just about we love doing this. We love what God called us to do. And so,
yeah.
All right, man.
Yes, sir. So I think we've covered a lot of the contents. We read a lot so that we know a lot. We're well versed in a broad range of subjects. But I think reading, something else that it does is it's not just the outcome, it's the process. So it's not just what we learn, but it's that we learn to think, we learn to grapple with complexity, we learn to weigh out opinions, we learn to understand nuance and arguments. And I believe that as many of us, we're obviously facing a very culturally, racially, politically divided world. And for a large part, that's because we've learned to think in 140 characters, or I guess, Twitter doubled the limit to 280.
Right.
We've learned to think in memes. We've learned to think in sound bites. And
Right.
what reading does is not just what you learn, but if you read a well-written, well-thought-out book, it trains your brain to deal with nuance and complexity. Well, that argument, they say this and this person says this, but now we synthesize it and we can get to this outcome. And that critical thinking, if you want to be a countercultural leader, it's really learning to think with that kind of depth and nuance.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it referenced before that the pastor used to be the most respected person in town,
Right.
but now he's the least respected person in town. But also the pastor used to be the most well-read person in town.
Right.
And so I think that's something that we really need to get back to, is just training ourselves to deal with a complexity of thought that a book offers, that what so much of social media, the things that we consume, the junk food we consume day in and day out, it just doesn't, it trains our brain to think simply rather than in the complexity that the real world has to offer.
Absolutely. One thing that you have to avoid right now, it's just because we're in a perfect time for this example to be right. This is the most divisive time I ever remember, with all the compound situations that are happening. We're not just looking at two men who neither sounded like statesmen last night. They both telling the other one to shut up, and they're both talking over each other. Everything that we teach our children not to do, these two men did. No one won that because it was atrocious. So if that's happening, but then let's take on everything else that's going on in the world. What you don't want to do is say, you know what, I need to answer this. And so you go grab you a book and you read, okay. And now let me tell you, hold on. All you did was heat something up. You got to get it in, and it's got to stay there. You have to know it. You have to understand why you're saying it. You've got to know the background behind it, or you're going to make a mistake, because there's too many minds in this field. So reading gives you that. When I was 15 or so, probably ninth grade or whatever, I don't know if it was an assignment. I don't remember why I read it, but I read a book called Black Like Me. And it was written in 1959, published in 61. And John Griffin, a white man, went to New Orleans, went under with a dermatologist, and there's a word for it, but he took the pigment of his skin and turned it as dark as he could. And for the next 6 weeks, I mean, even some of his friends didn't recognize him when he even walked up to him. The man that shined his shoes didn't recognize him. For the next 6 weeks, he went across the South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, chronicling, and he had someone with him that, was taking it all down as well. And they were doing this for a magazine, chronicling what it felt like to be black in 1961, whenever, I think 61 when he did this. I read that at 15. So that's been in the bottom of somewhere inside of my container of me. That's been there a long time. That I am able to reference it now, all these years later. 45 years later, I'm referencing something that I put in the tank back then. So whenever if I say something about this divisive moment, and someone just, well, that's something you read on Twitter. No. This is something that's been inside of me for 45 years. Why I feel, why I sense, the empathy that I needed to learn, what it felt like to be there. This guy got for the first time to look through the eyes of what it felt like to be measured by the color of your skin instead of the content of your character. He got to feel that. So I got to read it from his version. So something like that, I'm just using that as an example. So now, while that's a hotbed, that when I have to go there, I have something that I stand on. That may not be all I stand on, but I can say, no, for 45 years, I've tried to look at this subject the best I could. I started as a teenager, that kind of thing. And then you learn, as the scripture says, the knowledge of the Word of God is cumulative. It's line upon line, precept on precept, here a little, there a little. That's how the Lord gives you knowledge. Peter wrote that you add to your faith virtue, and then to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, to temperance patience, to patience brotherly kindness charity. He stacked it up and said, and if these things are in you and they abound, you will be neither barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. So he was saying, continually learning, add to your faith virtue. Well, faith, I got in, hallelujah, my name's in the Lamb's Book of Life. That's your birth certificate. Now what are you going to do with your life? The birth certificate just means you're here. Okay, you're here. Now, who are you going to be? What are you going to do? What's going to matter to you? What is your value system? Many of us, by the accident of our birth, had value systems handed to us, and you can't go over the neighbors and look in and say, well, that's a family. Even if you don't like your family, where you grew up, that's your benchmark. You could say the whole time, I don't like it, but that is what you measure with. And so many people today say, well, that's just the way I was raised. That's not an excuse, because we have too much access to books, to knowledge, to studying. It's not just books, it's getting with the right people. Sometimes being with the right people, just listening, just listening to them. When I was a kid, I would talk too much. I would say, so the conversation, between when Dad had ministers around, they're talking back and forth, and I want to get in, and so I would say something or whatever. And Dad, he kind of gentle, but he'd kind of do his hand like that, hold, And at some point, he coined the phrase that's become unbelievably powerful at our church. It's said fairly often. Dad said, "Son, don't ever pass up a good chance to shut up." And that's going to be, that right there will keep you all day and help you through the night. That is the, boy, don't you wish you could have trumpeted that last night on that stage? Sirs, don't pass up this chance to shut up and we didn't know we were going to do it on this day, and that was going to happen. That was a classic example of people who are spewing out of the vitriol that's inside of their heart and life and mind, and they're just doing that, as opposed to, I need to carefully bring to the American people something that I have studied and something that I know. We got last night a fist fight in the 5th grade is what we got. And those are supposed to be some of the statesmen of our country. So that tells you why the minister's position is unbelievably important, because you stand up there to raise the bar on this thing, not get in the fracas, not get in that fray, to raise it. To do that, you've got to be able to speak to the people that are sitting in front of you. If you speak, and this isn't, some people haven't had the chance for education, so this isn't bad on anybody. Everybody's got a place. But if you can't speak past the 3rd grade level, you're not going to attract a college person. You're not going to attract a person that works in a place more than putting tires on cars. And there's nothing wrong with that. My church is filled with that. We need that. But I've got to reach that guy, that girl, and talk to that doctor. And to do that, I need words. And don't just go find the words. We've all, I don't know if you have, but I've listened to preachers that use words and no one else knows what they're talking about. And I've tried to study words, and sometimes they're not even close to using them right. Not even close to using them right. And who are you trying to impress? The big word is not that. Big words don't mean you're smart. If you want to know what's smart, you want to know what's intelligent, it's the man who can talk and everybody in the room go, I got that. Now that's intelligence. to be able to bring what you have to say and say it in a way that everybody goes, whew, I got that. And to do that, you got to read, because you got to know what humor is. You got to know that you're touching on sarcasm, and sarcasm always has a touch of truth. So you don't go very deep there, but you know what it looks like. You have to do the work almost of a comedian. You've got to learn timing. You got to learn how to say it the right way. Somebody can tell the exact same joke without timing, it's not funny. But when they say it with timing, it's unbelievable. Some things that you lead in scripture and you know where you're going, and you take it out and you hold it there, and the people in the audience, they grab it, they'll take it right there. They go, if you're preaching something, I'm making something up here. We're going to stay with the Lord until he takes us all the way. And then you say, no matter what we go through, we're going to stay with the Lord till he takes us all the way. No matter what trial is in your life right now, you go all the way, and you just do that, and you begin that chant if that's where you need to go. And in a few minutes, those people out there, they're going to start helping you finish that. And you can pause, and they can do it. Now, that doesn't mean it's good preaching. That means people will follow you. I've heard guys do that. It wasn't good preaching, but sometimes you can do it, and it is right. But point is, if you learn how to command language and become competent, you can do some good stuff. So, hey, Pastor Rex, this just throws you on the spot. I know you probably hadn't used it in years. The illustration you used many years ago about the Russian soldier that got wounded, do you remember it well enough to pull it off the top of your head?
No.
I'll start feeding it to you a little bit.
I'll think of it and I'll get back to
Yeah,
it.
let me feed it to you a little bit. So Pastor Rex is telling a story about ineffective churches, that churches that just can't seem to, they just can't get any traction. And he said, it's like this Russian soldier that whenever they were fighting in the First World War, he got wounded, not seriously, but like shot in the hand, and he got wounded. So they sent him on back, go back and you'll find the hospital there. So he looks through the town with his hand wrapped up, and he finds the hospital. Okay, so he goes in, and there's two people sitting there, two desks. And he says, I'm here. I got shot, and they sent me from the deal. And they said, are you wounded? Yes, I am. How seriously? Well, it's in my hand. So, okay, so it's not deathly? No, okay, then you go this way. And so he walked down that hall, and he sees another door, and he steps in and says, okay, I shot my hand, or got shot in the hand. They sent me down here. And they said, okay, well, sit over here and then fill these forms out. And I can't hardly do it, filled out the form on the other hand, said it, and said, now go over here and see this guy. And he talked to another guy that helped him and then he kept waiting for the doctor. And then finally he said, now go through this room. And he goes through the next room, and it says, okay, are you a member of the Communist Party? He said, well, no, I'm not. Okay, well, then go through this door. And he went out the next door, and he was outside. And he goes home, and his wife said, well, did they help you? He said, no, but they sure are organized.
That's right.
That illustration shows we got the cool stuff here, we got the neat stuff there. Do y'all stop there and stand there? This is when we say, now you step up here, and the lights come up, and more smoke, and we got to get the smoke machine to do what it's got to do, and the lights have got to spin right to left, not left to right, and we got all that. Whew, we're organized. But then Brother Wonderful steps up, and he hasn't read anything, he hasn't studied anything, or maybe he started on Saturday night at 9 o'clock. They sure are organized.
Right.
They don't have. It didn't really help me that much, but
You did good. You did good on that. Yeah, you did good.
And they're organized. Pastor Landon, we're so far off what you have to say. Bring us back.
Well, that's no. This is the whole point of what we're doing today. Is just to highlight the brilliance of Pastor Brad Jones, and so you can talk about whatever you want to talk. I think everyone in the room would agree. We just like to hear whatever you have to say, whatever you want to talk about.
That's funny.
But so I think what'll be fun next though is because I've had the privilege of being in a room with you when you've done this before, is where you talk about how you catalog what you're reading. So you showed us in the video that you make the sticky notes so you can always find it, but then you have a really good system of cataloging those thoughts and then using them, and so that really becomes a preaching library from whenever you
Okay, so that's an example. I just asked Pastor Rick something that he said 30 years ago, and it wasn't fresh in his mind, because no one can keep all that fresh in your mind. Stuck in my mind just because where I was at that moment, that really fit where I was. So that kind of, I've held that came home. The reason you get a catalog system is because when you do this for a while, you're not going to remember every place you've read something. You'll remember something about it. Just like I don't remember every meal I've had in the last week, much less the last month. But all of those have worked together to give me the strength to sit here. I mean, they were important. I'm here. I'm healthy. I can do this. So if you want to not waste your time that you have read, find a way to be able to go back and pick up the diamonds you discovered, the gems. And I'm telling you, you might read the whole book and get one or two things out of it. That happens a lot. You don't need to think there's acres of diamonds in every book, although Russell Conwell says there is. So I do it two ways, or really three. If I buy it on the Kindle, and which I recommend, unless you've got $1 bazillion, to buy a book first and electronically for $9 and see if you like it, see if it works for you. And so I do that. And if you find a point that you like on your Kindle, I don't know what model you have, but on mine, I can tap that and it opens to a notepad. And I can type out my notes, my thoughts there about this. Wow, this guy seems to have a real insight dealing with the grace of God. That's something I've not looked at this before. This is a new site. I want to study this more. That's what I do. And I close that and then keep reading. When I get done with the book, I can go back and just hit notepad, and all the things that I made note of, just imagine they're sticky notes. And sticky notes, you stuck them in the place in the book. And you go back and they're all one deal. Then I just send it over to the computer, open it up in a Word document, and everything that was in my mind useful at that moment from that book, I now have in front of me. And and then in your sermon, whenever you're writing it, remember, if you preach for a while, you're going to come back to this later on and read this. You're not going to remember that. So if you found that in Oswald Sanders, then you come in there and you'll put Oswald Sanders chapter 6 just in your own footnotes so you'll know later what you did, just so you may get more insight. I want to go back and look at that some more. So that's one way that I do that. Sometimes I'm reading the paper book like we were talking the other day, and I have the little sticky notes that I use that are don't buy the ones that are going to tear the paper. It's literally those that have the arrow that says sign here. They pull off paper real easy, and I just stick them on anywhere I'm reading. That's a good point. I like that. I don't even chronicle the good point. I just, wow, I want to remember that. I might highlight something and I'll put these notes, and then everywhere I do that, I leave at least one little sticky, just that far sticking out of the edge of the book. So later when I'm looking at my bookshelves, I can pick it up and know I've read this book, and there's 11 stickies that are sticking out here that meant something to me. And we decided we're going to build a sermon series on stand. That's what we're about to do. Having done all the stand therefore. So, sometimes you make the stand. So now anything that's in that genre, I go back through looking at I'm talking about the paper library, the hardcore, hardback and paperback. I go back and look, and if there's a little sticky that's anything to do with that, I'll pull it out. And the third way I do it is anything that I'm reading that is that clicks in my mind, but I'm not sure where I'm going to go with it. I started, this is fairly new, so this one hasn't worked. I haven't got a lot on this yet, but just like Google, just like a guy that's selling this, who wants this to be found on Google, he thinks of every way you're going to type in that search engine, container, water container, stainless steel, flip cap, handle on plastic. You go down sometimes and you can look at the string that they put down there of those words, that when you type those words, any of those words will take you to this. So in my library that I keep one going in just in a Word document. I got pages and pages of the books that I have, and I have, it'll say chapter 2, page 11, and out beside it, I'll just put grace, expedient grace, grace, prevenient grace, just anything that I'm thinking, okay, what later on I'm trying to build something and I want to find something about this. What would I say? It's kind of like when you're trying to do your passwords. Okay, now later on when I can't remember this, what would, if I ask me what I would say, that's it. That's what you do. And to put them all in there, and in time, I have several thousand books in my library because that's what I do. I love books. And when I do that, then I'm able to go back, and in time, I'll have everything chronicled. I may hire somebody someday to go through and put all that in there for me. And I will have, it's just like if you were, in the old days at the library, you had to go through the card catalog and you had to look for something by that deal. Well, doing a system kind of like that. And there's probably somebody watching here that there's a database program out there that probably does what I'm doing. And I'm doing it backyard style with a 7/8 wrench and a screwdriver, there's probably something out there that just makes it easy. I'm just doing this because it's something I can do. And if I find a better way to do it, I will. But I don't want to be the Russian soldier walking out going, no, it's really organized, but I don't have any clue what that is. I want to be able to find what I'm doing. So, because I spend a lot of money on books. I spend a lot of money. Let's see if this will work right here. I can't, my square is really, really small. So y'all tell me if I don't have this right, Landon. So right up here, those books at the top, those books right there were a special gift to me. That's the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin that his grandson had. They're printed in 1818.
Wow.
And that was a gift for me. And so I have those up there on that shelf because I honor that. The first 2 books of that autobiography he wrote when he was a very young man and thought he had all the answers. And then the last 4 is, as a grandfather, he's wanting to leave his grandson the knowledge of what he knows. And so he's writing then as an aged man, and it doesn't even sound like the same man because he of his position in life of what he's reading then as compared to something else. So my point is, I'm surrounded by books. I all over the library, but that's my thing.
Right. To
do what we're saying, you don't necessarily have to be a bibliophile. That's okay if that doesn't do you. But what is not okay is for you to study and have no way of recall of what you've done. That's not okay. Mm-hmm. And then you have to treat this. It's just study. Let's call it study instead of just reading. You have to treat study. It has to matter enough to you that you block time for it. Because I hear all the time people say, you know what, I don't have time to read. I just don't have time. Well, this is what I do. It works for me. Maybe it will for you. I usually plan about a week and a half, 10 days in advance as I'm looking at my calendar for things that I'm going to allow or meet or whatever. And Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I'm just making this up, Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to have an appointment with Oswald Sanders that'll be for 2 hours. And I just write Oswald Sanders. And anyone that's helping me fill my deal, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, you won't be, he'll be with Mr. Sanders for 2 hours. And I will. And those 2 hours, I'm going to study and I'm going to read. Well, no, you need to be given to the people. No, you have to every so often put something back in the deal. I mean, some people just keep loading the wagon. The mule can't pull it. You got to have something to do or say. You can't fake this. You can't. You have to do this with the layered knowledge of living, of life. When you see something happening, don't be the normal participant in the crowd that just sees it. See it for, wow, I need to take that, bring that in, use that, because that could be effective for me to, reaching somebody else. find ways to find ways to, like sharpen your mind, there's an old show out there. I understand that there's a newer version, but there's an old show. Whose Line Is It Anyway? The ones that were taped about 20 years ago when Drew Carey was the guy over it. They're comedians and they're doing improv. And literally in that moment, they call out the audience and say, "What's the scene?" And they'll say, "They're garbage men." And what is the problem? They'll say, and these three or four people get up, and you watch a mind jump into gear to tell the story, to bring it about, and what they do. And I'm not telling you to do that so you can go be a comedian. I'm telling you to do that to watch how they were able to go somewhere in their mind. That's why Pastor Rex is, sound like I'm just waving his deal for that. That's why he's so good. He has the mind to go to that story. He talks about his illustrations. His illustrations are killer. You can talk for 20 minutes and maybe not affect it right, but you bring in the right illustration at the right moment, man, you bring it home. That's what he does. Watching those people will teach you timing. And timing sometimes brings an emphasis. That's what I just did. Just slow down. Whoever was writing looked up right then and said, "What did he stroke or what happened?" No, just hold up a second. Use inflection. The way I was raised, a lot of preachers got up and said, "Well, glory to God, we're glad you're here, praise God." And they kept that level and louder, and that's all. They did it all the way through. That's like a mother that starts yelling as soon as she wakes up. Later on, her kid, goes out in the street and gets run over by a bicycle because she was screaming, "Stop!" But you've been screaming all morning, Mom. I mean, I don't know when's emphasis. Where's the emphasis? There's no emphasis. Sometimes I listen to myself and playing in the next room, and I can't quite hear. Maybe one of our podcasts or something playing again, and I can't quite hear my words, but I can hear my voice and the cadence of what I'm doing. And I told my wife, "Man, sometimes I sound angry, and I'm that's passion, but I got to be careful that my passion doesn't come off as anger, because it could have that sound. If these unchurched people sitting there, they don't know what you're doing. That's why you got to have some stuff. You got to have something. You got to have fuel in the tank. You don't go till you see the red light on as a minister, and then you have to suddenly start looking for gasoline anywhere on the side of the road, any kind, anywhere from anybody. That's not your best way to do it. There's a fabulous book that teaches. It's not a God book. It's a book about speeches, really. Stand like Lincoln, speak like Churchill. And I mean, it's just got 20 chapters, whatever it is. And each chapter, everybody should have to read one chapter a week over and over and over. Just go back and read it again and again and again. I've got it on audio and I listen to it all the time. He talks about how to say the pause. He talks about cadence. He'll bring back the stories of someone that's done something. Martin Luther King, we talk about his "I Have a Dream" speech. That's what we call it. That was his ending. He spoke 21 minutes before that, and it was nothing. And then somebody over on the side, like Mahalia Jackson, said, "Tell him your dream, Martin. Tell him your dream." Because he was standing in front of 250,000 people, and even he got stage shock. He was supposed to have been that, and he didn't. And he shifted off of what he had written down. But you go back, listen to the whole thing. It's just like reading a cookbook. I mean, there's not much there. And that's when his voice changes. When Mahalia says, "Tell him about your dream, Martin," that's when he says, "I have a dream." And you even watch him do his head, and then watch everybody around him. Their heads come up. Suddenly, you're not just telling me, I think I said that on the video the other day. What if he had said, "I have a plan"? And their heads would have stayed down. The plans, they all have plans too. They're trying to find a restroom. I mean, you better give them something. that will reach inside of them, something they'll do from here, something they'll pull out of their spirit, something that they'll, man, you know, and he does that. Well, you learn that cadence of that. Well, one of the rules, I'm all over the place here. You just tell me when to stop. One of the rules that that is used some, but not often enough, is when you're introduced. So you're introduced, and I'm gonna make it up. So Pastor Rex says, "So glad to have Pastor Brett here. He's gonna come preach to us the Word of God. Let's all welcome him." And I walk up, and what everyone expects me to do is take the next 3 minutes going, "Oh, you're good. Everybody's good. You're good. You're good. And I love him. It'd be good. That's all. It's good." And I've burned my first 2 to 3 minutes of impact. Well, it'd be better, perhaps, not every time, to stand there, collect my thought, go into what I'm going to talk about. Don't even do this, "I'm glad to be here" stuff. Go to what I'm talking about. And once I've got those people with me and I'm already into it, in the first few minutes I'm going to say, and that's the reason why, what I'm setting forth here is why this great pastor has allowed me to come and speak to you. And I'm still there because I'm an honor guy, Landon. That we honor. That's a big deal. If you don't honor, you could never have a place on our team, because that's our currency. That's what we do. I'm going to do that, but I might need to switch up a little bit if I want to raise my effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that from reading.
Right.
Nobody told me that, and very few have read that book, because most people get up and take. You want to hear something sad? I found a cassette tape and found something that would play it of me preaching in 1983 in Modesto, California. And I think my time in the pulpit is like an hour and 10, 15 minutes, just my time in the pulpit. And I think it's about 17 or 18 minutes. I don't say jack squat. I'm just like, "Well, glad to be here. Jones, Sister Jones," my wife's 23. "Sister Jones, you know, and go ahead, you know," and I got on Sansa and triple knit and double knit and Swedish knit, and I'm just, you know, and I just, and I'm screaming at the tape player now, "Say something!" My God, now because we have a clock in front of us, we got to get it and go with this thing. You better have something in the tank if you're going to do this. Yes. All right, back to you.
All right. Well, I think we're just about out of time here, but maybe one last question, one last thought would be, let's talk about some practical ways that we get from this reservoir of information, you know, from reading, cataloging, keeping good records, finding access. So how do we get from this huge bank of information to a 30-minute sermon? So what are some practical things that we do to begin to whittle down, you know, what's important, what's going to have an impact? Because I think the point that we're getting to is that if you spend a lot of time preparing the speaker, you have to spend less time preparing the sermon. The more you prepare yourself, the more quickly. So Pastor Brett, what's really interesting here at Grace is that we write sermons as a team, and often we can crank out those sermons relatively quickly because we spend a lot of time preparing ourselves, keeping good records, staying well read, staying in the scriptures. And so, yeah, let's block out this afternoon and get a sermon for Sunday. Would you say that that's true most of the time? That the more you're prepared for yourself, the easier it gets to prepare the sermon or the message?
Absolutely. If you are going to speak on a subject you have never, ever, ever spoken about, it's going to be a lot harder because you've got no foundation, no pad, nothing in there that you can go and say, "I'm going to add to what I've done." So you're just greenfielding the thing. You're just coming off the ground, just trying to bring something up. One of the best ways, and this is if I could tell everybody to not to do the antithesis of what you saw last night, if I could tell everybody to realize that criticism, we should do critique, right? We should do it. How can we say this better? And remember that your friend loves you like you are. Your mentor loves you too much to leave you like you are. So you need a mentor. and you need to hand them your CD or send them the MP3 and say, would you listen to this? Landon, I've done that for you. I've listened to your stuff and sent back and said, man, this is a good, I like this point. Tell me what you were working hard to do here, because there might be another way to do that. And you got to open up. Now, the reason this is tricky is because there are some people that they have infectious hands, and you open up and they're going to infect you. So you have to find someone with clean hands. You got to find someone who wants to see you succeed as badly as they want to succeed. This weekend with the sermon coming up I was supposed to step up and take this one. My brother had surgery, so I took the weight off of him on several of them, and then I'm going to be gone in a week or two. So I was taking this one in the first weekend of where we're going. But it's burning in him. He got a hold of Pastor Landon and said, help me with this. And so it's burning him. So I went back to the beginning and said, okay, now you had your hip replaced just the other day. I'm here. I can do that. I've got it. Okay. There's a trust there. I know he didn't just reject me. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we are all on such shaky ground in our own psyche and who we are, that if anyone says something like that to us, well, I can't. I get done. I mean, it's all over. I mean, woe is me. Bad. And I'm not even. That may not always be your fault, because I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're in a teaching environment. I don't know that. This is a teaching environment that we live in. There are some guys I listen to every so often that, they ask me to speak in their lives. And so I've listened to just randomly. I'll go listen to a sermon and I'll call them. Most of the time it's like, wow, killed it, man. That was great. I mean, I went to the altar and I was listening in the truck, 1,000 miles from you. That was great. And sometimes I'd be like, where were you trying to go with this? Or was that the best way? Or, it seemed like you were rushing your points. And we all feel that way. We all have those times. I mean, I just told you, Pastor Rex, in my opinion, my top 3 preachers of all time. I've been with him before he walked off the platform. Man, wow. We all feel that. It's just going to happen. All right. But don't let it happen because you weren't prepared. And you need somebody around you that won't just go, oh no, that was good, if it wasn't. But neither do they need to go, you suck, you're terrible. They don't need to do that either. We've got to have somebody in our world that we listen to, that we trust, and that we build one another up. I want to see you teach, preach better than a year ago. I know you're better. I've listened to you. You're better now than you were a year ago. And some of that is because you're in an environment where you can say, how was that? What did I do? Well, we did this. But I do this. When we were doing 5 services a weekend and we did Saturday night, I would come down and get all of you guys together and say, okay, how was it? What do I need to do different? Sometimes they would be like, start over completely. And then sometimes it was just, hey, trim this up here, do this. So you need an environment. It's like you can plant the best seed in the world, but if the environment's bad, nothing's going to grow. Right. So you as a person, you need a coaching environment. Everybody. Sometimes a baseball player that makes $20 million or 50 or whatever, makes $1 bazillion is standing down there getting ready to, or he's in batting practice, and they got the little cage around him. You'll see this guy there that looks like me hanging on the deal behind him, and he's got on a uniform, but it doesn't quite look like that guy that's chiseled in his swing. And this guy will be talking to him. I've only been able to see this once or twice, but it was batting practice, and someone said that's his batting coach, and I was like, okay, he doesn't look anything like him. Yeah, he's not swinging. He just has the ability to see how to do it, the ability to tell you, okay, you're dropping your shoulder or hold up here. So you don't always have to find somebody that is the master of it. It's just someone that can be honest with you. And if you're married and you can't handle it, don't ask your wife how to do, because if she says terrible and you just go get under a rock, You've got to figure out how to get better by having people listen to what you say, and then listen to good people. Listen to stuff. You ought to be listening to some sermons where you go, "Oh my Lord, if I ever sound like that, shoot me," because you're just listening to everything. They're all out there now. Everybody's on the internet now. And listen, but because you're saying, I've read, I know that's not the best way to do that. That's some of the ways.
Right.
You need a mentor. Need a mentor.
That is very, very helpful. And because I do think that many people that are very well read, it's easy to become so informational and obviously we've said it before, but that the goal of preaching is not to give information, but to effect transformation. And I think it's also easy to forget that none of us are called to teach content. We're called to teach people.
That's right.
Begin to make that slight differentiation that
you can see when this happens is when somebody's teaching, somebody's preaching, they're bringing it, and they've got 5 points, and point 3, bing, and everything happens, and the people are moving, and they go, "Yeah, okay, bring it back down. I have 2 more things to say." You're not teaching the lesson, you're teaching the people.
Right.
And you're hung up on teaching the lesson. Well, I got 2 more points. You'll get another chance. It's the Word of God. It'll be fresh then. If you've got the result in the audience and somebody's ready to give their heart to God, or somebody's ready to commit, or whatever you're working on, and it's ready, go with it.
Right.
Here's the news flash. It's not about you.
Right.
We're the hammers. Jesus is the carpenter.
Right. Maybe I could just wrap up with a quick story that aligns with that so well. So I was preparing for a funeral a couple weeks ago, and it was kind of heavy on my heart, and it was unexpected death, but I didn't know anyone that was going to be there. I only knew a very few people, and so as a speaker, one of the first things you want to do with any audience is establish your ethos, which is, I want people to know that they can listen to me. But so what I was grappling with was, well, how do you establish your ethos whenever you're at a funeral? And it's not really about you. You're there to honor the individual, and you're there to honor the family, comfort the family. And the last thing you want to do is tell some kind of humorous illustration about yourself to win the audience over. So how do you do that? And so I was praying. I said, God, I want to do this, but it's not about me. I'm here to honor this individual. And God said, well, what do you think you're doing on Sundays? So that it's not about you, that it's there, you're there to honor someone else, which was just, I think, a good correction that we all need sometimes, is to remember that it's really not about us, and anything that we do.
It's finding the chance to put the seed in the ground. When you get that chance, you do. You said the funeral thing came in my mind. In 1983 or 4, I was preaching a revival in Wichita Falls, Texas, and that place can be as cold as Antarctica. It was wind blowing 40 miles an hour, whatever. Man, the church had a funeral home, and somebody needed a preacher, and I don't even remember where the pastor was. But somehow it fell on me, or they asked if I would do it. Sure, I'd be happy to. So I go to the funeral home the night before, and the family's not there, but they've written something for me to know about the lady that I'm going to talk about. The next morning, the wind is at least 40 miles an hour. It's below freezing. The chill factor is unbelievably cold. We go out. I go to it's graveside only. Go to the graveside. I'm standing there. The funeral director's standing here. It gets to be 11 o'clock and no family. 11:10, 11:15, no family. He finally gets in the car and drives back to thinking, well, maybe that's the funeral home. He drives back out, and he said, they're not coming. Let's go. And I said, well, let me say a couple words. He said, you're kidding me, right? No, I mean, she deserves somebody to say something about her. I mean, this says she was a good mother, the things they told me. He said, and he didn't say, you're kidding me. He was like, he was like, we're cold. It's time to go. And I don't know why I did it that day. Maybe I wouldn't have the other times, but I said, no, just a second. And I didn't spend 5 minutes, but I preached a funeral to some empty chairs for 5 to 7 minutes. And the Lord said, just like he did Genesis 22 to Abraham, now I know that you won't withhold anything from me.
Wow. And
I'm gonna do something with you. I'm gonna build something. This after that, whenever the calls came to be able to do some of the stuff I'm doing now. If you aren't willing to do the funeral when nobody's looking, you're not going to be chosen to do anything
Right.
later. Because if you're too good to sweep the stage, you're not good enough to stand on it.
Right. So that's a perfect place to leave off. Pastor Brett, thank you so much
You're welcome.
for doing this. And then actually, Pastor Rex, you're up here in a few weeks yourself. So Pastor Brett, you can come back and crash Pastor Rex's party too.
I am. I'm coming back, and I'm taking 11.30 seconds.
For the rest of you guys, thank you so much for joining. It's been so good. Continue to do our book study together, participate in the discussion and the chat on the Facebook page. And thank you guys, all of us. I just want to honor all of you for taking time today in this. I know it's been a very probably a busy day where you are, but if the church or if the world ever needed leaders and ever needed people to step up to the task, it's right now. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for plugging in. And if we can serve you or help you in any way, just let us know. God bless you guys.